Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Highly Inspired. I'm Ella.
And I'm Jordan.
Hey, guys. Welcome back. This week, we are going to be talking about the concept of own nothing and you'll be happy. Earlier this year, the World Economic Forum released a video advertising this concept about explaining kind of how in the future we would rent most of the items that we would need to live, and that as technology improved, we wouldn't need as many material goods and we could kind of downgrade our lives and kind of experience the world through the digital space and realm. And I think at first, on face value, this idea sounds great. You know, life gets cheaper, it's more convenient, everything becomes like an Amazon Prime delivery service in a way. But if you dig a little deeper, I think that you come to realize that this concept is kind of a lie. And of course, we should be less greedy. And of course, we should try to be not as materialistic. But you can do those things without some government entity taking all of our money and our land and ultimately our bodily autonomy. They claim, that a carbon tax and a capital gains tax and restricting our travel is going to be the way to solve this. But in reality, they're the ones that are taking these private jets that are causing all this carbon emissions while you are still stuck in your home on COVID lockdown. So I think in this episode, we're going to get into that concept and really dissect like what they actually mean by that and what the truth is behind that,
Yes. It's definitely hypocritical to advertise that we as folks need to limit the amount of assets we have or the amount of transportation that we do or the amount of just material possessions that we have. But in the background, they're the ones who actually transport the most, have the highest carbon emissions. And I don't know if that's fair to push us all towards that reality of not actually having anything or having control over anything. Yeah, sure, it's less liability to maintenance your own items that you are in possession of, but like that's the beauty of it. It's yours or whatever it may be, clothing, cars, vehicles, toys. Like it could be a lot of different types of stuff. So yeah, I think that this title relates to a lot that's going on right now, especially even as the pandemic still isn't even closed out yet. So I'm excited to get into it.
Yeah. And I mean, I think that we just on a daily basis keep falling out and out of consistency and feeling like we have control over our lives. We have this shipping crisis that's going on. We have all these new taxes that are being thrown in our face.
The Metaverse is coming.
Like there's just been so much information like this last week and it's hard to keep track. And I think a lot of people, these concepts are really complex. And, people say, oh, there's like a shipping crisis, but then they just say, oh, it's because of COVID, you don't have food in your grocery stores. And it's like, okay, it's a little bit more complex than that. And our goal in this episode is to really like dive into that and try to explain it the best we can,
Have you noticed that everything that is a deficiency at whatever given point in time is labeled a crisis now?
Yes.
It's just like we go from crisis to crisis to crisis, and I feel like we need to either come up with another word to formulate some sort of hierarchy again or sort of diversify what is like a real crisis, what isn't.
Yeah.
I do think the shipping crisis is a crisis.
Yeah.
I mean, this is affecting so many the main supply chain. It is so hard on small businesses right now, and ultimately, I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know how we're going to figure this out.
Yeah, I mean, we were in California last weekend, and we met up with some friends. A lot of our friends are actually small business owners, which is great. We love that. And one of my buddies has like a clothing company, and he actually explained that he was like directly affected by this like whole shipping situation, and they had all these hats that were stuck on a boat in the middle of the ocean. And I actually drove by Long Beach and like saw this situation. It is nuts. Like I've never seen anything like this before in my life.
Yeah.
You hear about ships catching on fire and things exploding. I mean, talk about bad for the ocean and the environment. And when you dig into this, it's actually all human caused. Like there's regulations in place and we can dive into it, but that is what's causing this whole issue. It's not just this like weird occurrence that we have zero control over. There actually are ways that they could immediately fix the solution, and the mayor of Long Beach and the mayor of LA are refusing to intervene and take on those solutions.
Yeah, it's not like they've maxed out the solution. It's not like they've tried everything yet.
Yeah.
It's more like they're avoiding the problem, thinking it's just going to go away on its own. Or I don't know what their end goals are, but
Yeah, so that one thread that was by Ryan Peterson, I think.
Peterson.
Do you want to kind of explain what his perspective was when he went to see it firsthand, and they were kind of explaining to him what like the bottlenecks were?
Yeah, so basically, if I understand bottlenecking correctly, how they can solve this right now is by overwhelming it to the point where, I guess in the context of these, the chassis, which are the trailers.
The trailers that the ships get onto, like you can take the containers from unloading them into the shipyard and then onto like a truck to be transported. And I guess that all of those like trailers are underneath empty containers, and I guess there's regulation that these empty containers cannot be in a private like shipping yard. They have to stay in the public government
area. And that's because
area.
of California zoning laws.
Yes. And so the issue is that now the land is filled with empty containers and they have nowhere to go, so the containers that are filled with our goods are being stuck in the ocean.
And we have to move the
empty
containers
somewhere
in order to get the chassis, in order to use the chassis to be moving all the other containers that are coming in.
Yes, with our goods.
Yes. Okay. Oh my gosh. It's such a mess. Yeah. And we have a lack of staff, or I'm sure.
Yeah, there's a
labor
staff.
issue with.
There's a labor crisis with the vaccine mandates in California and nationwide. And then on top of it, you have regulation in California where apparently you have to buy a new truck every few years. So
why is that?
It's some sort
better
of
for the
environmental reason, which doesn't make sense. You're just going to waste
if it's the same type of
engine,
truck. If it's the same type of, like, say, gas powered, diesel powered engine, that's not any different. It's the same chemistry.
No, it makes no sense. I mean, it makes sense if you have a kind of a skeptical, scared viewpoint that you think maybe the government is allowing this to like happen on purpose so that we're just in continuous like crisis state.
Yeah.
But on face value, it doesn't make sense. I mean, there's experts that are in supply chain management that have given their recommendations to the mayor of Long Beach and the mayor of LA, and they're refusing to change. They have the power to like change zoning laws and to allow there to be more stacking of these containers offshore so that there's more room to unload like the new ones. And on top of it, they're now taxing businesses that still have goods in the ocean. So now people are getting taxed.
Not even in possession yet.
Yeah, they're getting taxed just because their stuff is stuck in the ports. And they have zero control over it, you know?
Gosh, it's inescapable.
Yeah.
It's like every loophole that we think could maybe be a solution, it's like their laws are preventing it from being successful.
Yeah.
Actually, we're like far from successful. I mean, economics or economists, and we've been talking about there being like a potential supply chain issue for a while now, especially even since the beginning of the pandemic. But I feel like what really set my mindset more towards the thinking of, wait a minute, do they actually want this? Is this part of some greater agenda? Was when we started seeing the series of statements by Biden, especially Jen Psaki when she was giving a press conference, specifically saying the phrase, lower your expectations. That is so hard hitting. And I've never heard someone of power, a politician or anybody of that caliber actually say that in America, because America wasn't founded on lowering our expectations. If our founding fathers had low expectations, they wouldn't have made America.
Yeah.
They would have settled and dealt with what they had where they had it.
Americans don't settle.
We don't settle.
Yeah.
We want what we want. We work hard. We are driven to get what we want. And we know that hard work can allow us to do that. We don't lower expectations, and I found that just completely absurd that she actually said that in all seriousness.
I didn't pick up on that, and I'm glad you brought that up because it honestly feels like it's on purpose.
Yes.
Like, why are you saying that? I think if you're...
It's like that was like on cue response. Like she knew exactly what to say. We could maybe attach the clip.
Yeah. And I think it's interesting because like it's government's job at a bare minimum to be running these systems and to have the person who is literally speaking on behalf of our president say lower your expectations to the American people. And I remember she tried to just say like, oh, sorry that you don't have your treadmill or whatever. And it's like, I think that people are like not just upset because they didn't get their exercise equipment on time.
Yes,
like
yes. Well, that was the object of like discussion during that exchange. But
there was multiple things that they were talking about.
But it's not always just a treadmill. Sometimes
involved.
It's someone's like, I don't know, ankle brace or something like, food. It's literal things that we have our lives revolve around or are a big part of our lives. It's not just a treadmill or like something recreational.
And I just feel like, again, this is something that is disproportionately affecting small businesses, similar to the pandemic. I mean, if they can't keep up with their orders, and then on top of this, they might get taxed for their stuff being stuck, and they can't get stuff out quick enough. I mean, that's going to hurt small business more than it's going to hurt Amazon. And I just...
And it's going to prevent a lot of people who want to maybe start a business one day from like towards doing that. They're not going to want to do that.
And don't you feel like it's interesting because when we were going through kind of this transition into the Trump presidency, a lot of companies were coming back and doing their manufacturing here, or at least that was like the narrative. And now you see we're importing again a lot of stuff. Not that we ever stopped importing from like China or Mexico or India. But we're starting to do that again. And the more we import, the more we're reliant on supply chain stuff, which apparently we're more reliant on California, which is the largest port, where you have these mayors that don't care and they aren't going to help you and they aren't going to fix you. And so this is proving out to be more and more that we need to be decentralized. We need to be making stuff in America. And it's not necessarily cheaper to make it overseas anymore, because if you're going to be taxed, if you're going to have to wait all this time, if things aren't going to get shipped fast enough to you, is it worth it? Or is it worth to pay a little bit extra money and make something in America and know that you have more control over how that gets distributed?
I mean, time is money too. If it's taking additional time to even get it, that's something to factor into your entire model too. So I'm all for us being more autonomous, doing everything here. I think it's cleaner. It's less people involved, less locations involved. So that could be maybe a solution, but people have to sign up for that. You're going to have to spend a little extra money, at least until we can figure out how to have most people be manufacturing here and establish that as the go-to and not overseas.
Yeah. Do you think, what do you think our Secretary of Transportation has done to solve this?
Okay. So I just found out about this. This is Pete Buttigieg, right? So he's on paternity leave.
Yes.
Daddy leave. He and his wife adopted. They just had a kid, and conveniently.
He's gay. So he and his husband. I don't know if they adopted or if they did a surrogate, but they just got a child recently, a baby.
Okay.
And they were taking, I think both of them took 2 months off to raise this child for paternity leave, which it was really interesting because I was listening to an episode of Joe Rogan and they were discussing it. Do you remember that part of that episode? Mm-hmm. And I don't really know, like, I don't want to make this episode about like paternity leave and like should that be a thing or not, because I just don't really know where I stand on that. But I do think
I don't either, to be honest.
It's interesting that regardless of what your position is on that, if you are in charge of something this big, like being the Secretary of Transportation, if there's a crisis like this going down, like I think that you kind of have to take a few days off from like hanging with your kid to try
Yeah.
to sort through this. But like I said, if you just said that Jen Psaki said lower your expectations, clearly they don't care to solve the problem.
No, they don't. And I think that her saying that actually did set the tone and kind of gave them some like protection points for facing that backlash, or for Buttigieg in particular to face that backlash.
I'm on the baby swing.
Yeah, like, hey, we warned you. We told you to lower your expectations. That was our instruction. So that buys me time to sort of not treat it as the crisis that it is. And I think that it is. And it's still in the early stages, which is the most important time to be figuring this out. Because if we don't, that bottlenecking is going to keep like overflowing and overflowing until the point where I don't know if it's fixable. And I didn't study like supply chain management or anything like that, but I do know that something as serious as this, with this much money and this amount of products, like, I don't know. And especially during the holidays, like, you know how many people are going to be ordering or going to be trying to order?
Well,
This is going to be very different than even last year.
This might be worse, to be honest.
It is going to be worse. It already is.
Yeah, I mean, and I honestly think that what happened with COVID was a way to kind of normalize that things would go out of stock. And I'm not against America slowing down, for the record. Like, I'm not against us getting away with like being a little bit less needy and like, oh, I need my Amazon
like
package
a little
to come.
slower of a lifestyle.
Yeah, like, I actually am pro that. I honestly would like to see that if it meant that workers could have more rights, people could have Sundays off. I'm actually pro that. I think that would be good for society and good for the family structure.
You can still get your stuff fast, but not at the cost of someone's like lifestyle or health or well-being or an employee's.
But the problem I have with this is it's not even about trying to balance workers' rights and having things be slowed down because of that, but it's because it's literally either people in charge being incompetent or negligent, or literally straight up doing this on purpose, which could be true at this point, given that everyone's so focused on the other quote unquote crisis, which is like the climate change situation, which obviously, like we've said before, we care about this planet and we want people to not be wasteful and not throw trash in the ocean and all that stuff. But having a globalized elite power structure in order to solve climate change, I don't think that is quite the answer.
Yes.
Yeah.
I am a fan of capitalism. I'm not a fan of capitalism that creates useless things, like just a lot of things that we don't need. But then again, I would never say that that's morally wrong to take advantage of it. I'm not quite sure how I decipher between the two. But I think that were we talking about climate change?
Yeah, like the conference that's going on right now, and just like I was making the connection that I feel like we should be focusing on this real crisis, which is a supply chain management crisis, but instead we shipped all of our politicians off on private jets to do this COP26 conference or whatever, and it just doesn't seem fair when we still aren't really even able to travel freely. And
it's like the same. It's like the same situation with the Olympics, where all the famous elite, like, I don't know, world leaders that are all over the world flew to this one place and had a powwow, and we all were focused on that, while specifically 5 million people quit their jobs because of vaccine mandates during that exact same time. It's just, we keep going through these cycles of keep the people distracted. Let's focus on this, and then we'll work on our agendas, and then they'll deal with their own issues. I've done some research into the COP26 event that's happening right now. It is happening in real time. It's not even going to be over until November 12th, which I don't know why they need 2 full weeks to sit and talk about their stuff, but that's a very long time. That's longer than the World Economic Forum conference. That's longer than Davos.
I'm sorry, but I don't want to hear Prince Charles, who was horrible to his wife, Princess Diana, and there's definitely some sketchy shit going on with her death. I don't want to hear.
He's definitely.
I don't want to hear him. Excuse my French, by the way. I'm so sorry. I really try not to cuss on this, but I don't want to hear him lecture me about carbon emissions when haven't even traveled really through this whole pandemic to the level that they are all traveling. And I mean,
or just from someone who has grown up the way that he's grown up. He is such a unique individual. He's royalty. Every single thing has been handed to him on a silver platter, literally.
Why don't they give up their castles to pay for ending world hunger?
Yeah,
or something.
There you go. Like, let's type it up.
Yes.
Let's send him a proposal. I like that.
I saw the other day too. It was like the Queen is wearing the most expensive jewel or diamond from Africa or something. And I'm like, what happened to the people who used to call out these people as colonizers? Like, don't you see that they're still colonizing, but it's just a new way of colonizing? Mm-hmm. Like, they're still doing the same thing. Yeah. And it's frustrating because the people that used to be good at doing that are now blind to it and have been corporized. Mm-hmm. And have been college educated, which means you're kind of just brainwashed to not question these people and like question. Yep. And we're focused on like, we claim that we care about those issues. We claim like, oh, like we say America is a colonizing country, which doesn't really make sense because we never colonized anything. We came here first.
We just moved. Yeah.
Like England literally had an empire over the entire world. Not to say that we don't have territories, or when we like did the Western expansion, we didn't go into like native lands or whatever. But I'm just saying from a worldly perspective, England was like the dominating empire. And here you have the royal family at like the head of this new conference. Mm-hmm. And no one seems to have a problem with it. If anything, they're like glamorizing it. No,
I think they are. Yeah. It is interesting. You're right. I like that little glimpse back into history. We always try to throw that in here.
Yeah. It's just.
I'm sure we could maybe find some transcripts. I'm sure there will be clips that come out from some of these meetings or whoever talks. Yeah. I believe Biden is there. There was some footage of him speaking, and he randomly had this bleeding eye. Like the white of his eye just went blood red.
Mid-speech.
So if that's not indicative of his current health state, then I don't know what is.
Yeah, I think he fell asleep during one of the speakers. And yeah. I saw Justin Trudeau, a clip on him. I saw Prince Charles. I saw the Queen's talk, which it felt like someone just gave her a speech to read off a teleprompter. And then
probably
I saw Boris Johnson, which Boris Johnson, it's very interesting because he was sold as the populist. And I don't know, because he was the politician that was bringing behind the Brexit movement. Mm-hmm. And was kind of this, we thought.
He's the prime minister.
Yeah, we thought he was going to be a Trumpian sort of fellow. And he ended up being very much in the system, and now has been one of the like leaders of pushing like the COVID stuff and now the climate change crisis. Mm-hmm. Do you think that he was groomed for this? But originally he was a populist, or do you think that he was posing as a populist?
Groomed before he was elected, or
no,
groomed after?
Or do you think that he was posing? Like, do you think he truly was a populist when he ran, or do you think he was posing as a populist, but secretly?
I think he was posing.
Okay.
I think that we're seeing that pattern a lot. I mean, you could even say like the Biden and their entire campaign is you could say that, or people would say that that was a more moderate style of campaigning, what they advocated for, and then coming in very much not as moderate. So I think that it's not impossible to run in a style that obviously isn't going to be a reflection of what you actually do. And so it is possible to yeah.
But what's interesting is they actually did follow through and do Brexit, which is interesting because you would think if like he was posing, he wouldn't have actually gone through with it. But I don't.
Maybe that was.
But I don't know enough
in
about
place while he was transitioning, like after being elected, like giving the people a little bit here and there. So it obviously wasn't like all okay.
At
Wait,
once.
just kidding.
Yeah.
Maybe that was that. I don't know.
Yeah.
But
It's just I don't know either. But it's definitely interesting to think about, and it's interesting because there's a lot of
if there's any institution, sorry, I just cut you off.
you're
If
good.
there is any institution that has the resources and ability to groom, it is the royal family. Whoever the even whoever the royal family reports to. I don't know who that group is either. But if there is an institution that has the structure to be able to do that, it's there. I mean, it's so old, historic. The UK is huge. There's so many people.
The banking system there is insane. I mean, they're really one of like the financial capitals of the world. The city of London is literally just a financial city, and it operates kind of as its own entity outside of the greater London area. Kind of similar to the Vatican, although the Vatican is considered its own country technically. But it's definitely feels like this is the new agenda of the World Economic Forum and the UN and all these groups. Everyone seems to be kind of still COVID's there, but this seems to be the new face of the concern. And like we've talked about before, I think it's just a matter of time until these COVID restrictions get rolled over into climate change restrictions, because we're already seeing that with Canada and Justin Trudeau mentioning a carbon tax on driving.
How would they? So a carbon tax. So how taxes work is it obviously like there are different brackets depending on what they're able to track in terms of people's finances and how we submit our taxes, whatever. How would they be able to create different brackets for a carbon tax? How would we do that? What are metrics that we can measure? How can they validate and verify, depending on person to person, what we do? Would it be based on travel?
I think first travel, probably first air would be the first one. It was really interesting because I was actually looking.
How many miles our cars log?
Yeah, something like that. Like when I went to look at flights to New York, I had never seen this before, but right next to the dollar sign, it said how much carbon emissions each flight would emit. And it would say like, oh, this is medium, high, low. And so like they were encouraging you to choose a flight that had lower carbon emissions. And it was the first time that I had
hidden in plain sight.
Yeah, I first time I'd ever seen this, and I go, oh, I know what that is. That's prepping us. Because then what they're going to do is they're going to tie a dollar value to whatever that carbon amount is, and then they're going to tax you on that, like you do with a resort fee or a cleaning fee or whatever, you know? But where does that money go? And are they, like, I don't have any trust. It'd be one thing if, like, the government had a track record that they could solve crisis, but they can't. They don't want to solve the shipping container crisis, even when a bottleneck has been identified and solutions have been suggested. They don't want to solve.
Yeah, we're literally giving them the solutions. Like, this is how desperate we are in fixing this. We're giving them, like, I've seen some of these threads. They are very well thought out, numbers included. We're handing them over to them, and nothing's happening. It's not like this is a 2-day-old thing. This is like a several-week-old thing that's not changing.
Yeah. Afghanistan, they couldn't handle Afghanistan. So how could they if we couldn't handle a withdrawal from Afghanistan, and maybe we couldn't because our military's like a false illusion. Like maybe we aren't as good as we claim we are. I don't know, but clearly that did not go down properly. We left a ton of ammo and weapons there, and it's the same administration and politicians that say that they're very anti-gun.
$85 billion worth.
Yeah.
In fact.
So how can I trust these people to solve what they're claiming to be the biggest crisis that our generation is facing? And whether or not you believe that or not, do you trust them to solve it for you? That's the question I think we all could unite with.
I don't trust them to solve
and
it
I
for
don't.
me. I mean, I'm a results-based person. I like to see results. I like to see successful results. Then that can help me sort of gauge where to put my trust and how to predict their capabilities for future instances. And so far, the track record isn't great. So I don't know. I don't know why they need to have 2 full weeks of discussing climate change in this next crisis when we haven't even fully solved the first one. Like who? I'm sure their Australia representatives are at this conference too, right?
I don't know.
How can politicians from Australia be confidently and morally reinforced to be at this conference talking about climate change when they know what's going on in their own country and how completely awful it is right now?
Yeah.
I mean, Australia is in its own category of chaotic at this very moment, and so far I haven't seen any other country that's reaching that level of dark. I guess you could say.
I just read an article today that they are wiping bank accounts of people that are unvaccinated
in Australia.
Yeah. So they're literally clearing your cash. And so when they say you will own nothing and you will be happy, what they mean is that they are stealing from you. Like they are stealing from
like
you.
You're not complying with us, you aren't owed this, or you're not entitled to anything.
Yeah, basically.
Even wealth that you've accumulated through work on your own.
Yeah. And how I know that they're lying too is that you see all these private jets that are there. There's this tweet that I found that was on this girl Grace is for you, and it says private jets and long lines of SUVs to attend climate summits, anti-school choice while sending their kids to private schools, demanding diversity hires while keeping their position of power as white people, mandating masks while going out, enforcing lockdowns while continuing to party with friends, suggesting you eat bugs while they eat steak, condemning your protest while applauding someone else's riot, policing speech and thought while claiming tolerance, poisoning our kids' minds and calling us terrorists for wanting to stop them. And it keeps going on. But the point is that like
rules for thee, not for me.
Yeah, this is like we've seen this with COVID. Of course, they're going to do it with the pandemic. And I actually think that this quote where she says, keeping their positions as white people, you do see that. Like all these people that are attending these summits, like the majority of them are white.
Yeah.
And like they clearly don't care about like diversity or people from other countries or third world countries or including them in any of these discussions.
No, but it fits the narrative, and they are insistent on and persistent on keeping groups under their spell in a sense, as best as they can. And if that means they have to follow a certain set of messaging or propaganda, then they're willing to do that if it keeps those people attached.
Yeah, you're
to what
right.
they want to enact. So
yeah, it gives them a free pass because like they've convinced people the only way you can claim to be a good person is to keep voting for me. Like this is what we saw with Gavin Newsom. We knew people that literally voted for him in the recall election, and it's because they thought that that's what it meant to be a good person, and that's scary because when you look at Newsom, he he sent his kids to private school while public schools were shut down. And
And his kids, if I believe, haven't been vaccinated.
no, but everyone else has to be vaccinated. And I feel bad for people that attach their moral standing to voting for a politician, because that politician has ownership on saying whether or not you're a good person, as opposed to you being in control of that, and you dictating your own morality and being able to decipher that for yourself. Now you've attached it to someone else to tell you not only what you should believe, but what like almost treating someone like a god in a sense, and they're giving you
no, it is
certification,
because that feeling of guilt and that feeling of, oh, I don't know how I'm going to feel if I don't vote for this person, or if I don't say that I'm in support of this person. That feeling of guilt is real for people, and I feel like that the only way that can make sense is if they have been made to believe that they are obligated to follow along with whatever messaging that is. Mm-hmm. So in a sense, that kind of does have like a religious like identity behind it, which is kind of creepy. Slight transition, but kind of still relates to the climate change and own nothing and you will be happy theme of this episode. And it's this tweet. It says, "The year is 2030. To save the planet, you now only get 1 minute ration of warm water per day. Meat has been replaced by bug burgers and milk has been replaced with soy drinks," which we don't like soy. "You own nothing in the real world, but you do own a house in the digital metaverse." So obviously we all know that as of this week, Facebook just announced that they're rebranding. Facebook as the parent company is rebranding to Meta. And Meta is going to be the name. So I'm sure whatever products they create under that, this Metaverse, Meta VR, Meta video games, Meta servers, whatever it is, it's going to be it's going to be a whole lineup. They are not stopping anytime soon. This seems like a very significant refresh for the entire company. And I mean, I watched that clip of Mark announce it. And he did the whole VR simulation, like it was a whole edit. And not gonna lie, I think the graphics look pretty cool. I think that there will be some good that comes out of it. Mm-hmm. I think I am a fan of technology. I think that tech can be used in ethical ways, in very, positive lights. Mm-hmm. But I am very afraid of what propaganda tactics that they're going to succeed at via this new channel. We haven't seen VR propaganda at a mass scale yet. We've seen it through social media. Facebook was like basically the instigator of that. So I'm going to keep my eyes peeled and be very, very skeptical when this starts to become a thing, because anyone Gen Z who has obviously had tech in their hands from the times before we were even teenagers, kids now, babies now have it way more than we did. So VR to them is going to be like iPods to us. I feel like I'm afraid of it. Like there's like it's going to get to the point, like people are already advocating that it's a right in society now to have a smartphone. It's going to get to the point where it's a right, like, to have a VR headset.
But they're going to say it's a right, but it's a trick, because I think then if you have a VR set, then you can't complain about living in your pod and eating bugs.
Okay, that's a good point.
You know what I mean? Like they're going to say, oh, it's a right, it's for you. Like this is like something good that we're giving you. But in exchange, we're actually giving up. This is something that's really interesting when people say like, oh, healthcare is a right. And it kind of has been exacerbated with COVID, where we'd rather have like free COVID healthcare and like vaccines and tests versus our actual rights that we were founded on, and that we should value more than our right to quote unquote healthcare. Because if you look into healthcare industry, I mean, unless you're born with some sort of a genetic disease or something like that, we shouldn't be on all, like, this industry is a lot bigger than it naturally should be. So the fact that like we're saying we need a right to healthcare is actually kind of messed up because we don't really need it in the first place.
Yes,
you know what I'm saying?
yes.
And that's the same thing with VR is like, yeah, it's cool. Yeah, a smartphone is cool. And I don't think that the product shouldn't exist and be there, but you don't need it.
It's not a right.
It's not a right.
No.
And so they're convincing us that these things that actually aren't rights, we should care about more. And as they're doing that, we're giving up our real rights to the point where we might be stuck in a apartment pod bed and our only beauty into a bigger house or a backyard is through the digital world, you know?
Yeah.
And we might even be okay with that because we've been convinced that is what a right is versus a right to free speech, assemble,
and through all
guns,
of that
all that
glamorized
stuff.
exposure of the rights that we're hyper focused on getting, like say these glamorized VR headsets and this glamorized digital universe, that is going to make us feel so comfortable giving up the rights that we shouldn't give up. Yeah. So you're right. It's like one's gone, but then we pave way for another.
Yeah.
But how do we gauge? I don't know. Constitution, Bill of Rights.
Do you think backtrack first to the metaverse thing. I think
let's talk about meta for a bit because
it's really interesting. And I think what's interesting is that he announced this in the midst of the Maids scandal, which I don't know if do you want to talk about the Maids scandal with these maids that are being sold on Facebook?
Wait, so I only really heard Tim talk about it.
Yeah.
So is this human trafficking correlated?
I guess, kind of, in a sense. I mean, people are selling maids on Facebook in the Philippines, right?
Yes, and Facebook's allowing it to stay on there.
They're claiming they can't take it off because their AI isn't able to detect languages other than English, apparently.
Okay, that is complete bullshit. You're saying Facebook, one of the biggest tech companies in the entire world, if not the biggest, doesn't have the tech resources.
Talk about racism
for AI to validate a language or decipher a language. Like, what are they speaking? Alien? Like, this isn't a new language. We know Filipino or Tagalog. I think that's the language name specifically. But yeah, that doesn't make any sense, and that is an empty excuse. I hope everybody can read between the lines on that that's not an actual tangible excuse.
Yeah.
I'm sure there's investigations going on, but clearly this metaverse announcement is coming out at the perfect time as a smokescreen to distract everyone from the fact that Facebook allows very bad things on their platforms and then says that actually more good things should be censored and not that type of stuff.
Yeah. For real.
Like the whole whistleblower thing that happened a couple weeks ago. I don't know what's going on with that. There's like so many loose ends that have not been tied up. And I feel like when I really like start to go through the log of the past year or even just a couple of weeks, like all these news cycles just are empty. Like I have no closure. Yeah. And I like closure. I like to close a chapter, then go to the next one. Maybe if I can get some satisfaction after knowing something had a successful closure, then that helps. But when was the last time one of these instances had like it's a successful closure and then we move to the next one?
I don't know.
It hasn't happened ever.
Do you think if Steve Jobs was alive right now, how would he react to all the other like tech people out there that are kind of becoming like selling their souls to not creating better products or being imaginative or caring about humanity, but are kind of selling out America to China and globalist entities? I
mean, all I know of Steve Jobs is when he spoke and what he made and his role in Apple. I obviously don't know his psyche. I feel like there's a lot that goes into people of that caliber doing their job and performing for the world and performing for their product, but you don't actually get to like hear their morals in the background. But I think that he would, if he were alive today and could see what beast like the smartphone unleashed. I don't know. I don't even know. Imagine that. You made this product that birthed a whole revolution of mobile technology, and then to see the amount of bad that has come out of it, of all of us being connected. Like, what does Mark Zuckerberg say every day? We want to connect the world. That Meta, the next wave of Meta is we want to connect the world. Well, connecting the world comes with costs, and how many costs are we willing to keep in that picture or allow into that picture for the sake of some hyper rapid dated acceleration into this next wave of tech? Like, is that worth it? Is it worth people having this technology knowing how much bad we're still allowing into this digital universe?
But do you think they, outside of just like the digital component, I'm talking more about just like the fact that,
Like combining with like government
yeah,
institutions?
yeah, I think that Steve Jobs, he loved technology, but he also loved quality control. I think that he loved the American experience. He was very embodied of the American dream. I think that he was a nonconformist.
I do too.
I
Yeah.
read his biography, and I mean, he didn't write it himself, but you do learn a lot about him and like what he thought and his morale. And I could be wrong, but I just don't see how he could be on board with
No.
a lot of this like stuff right now. And I think that he would honestly be more in like the Elon Musk category, where Elon is kind of like an outsider in this group,
Yeah,
a
yeah.
little bit. And we could even talk about the most recent Twitter battle that went down between Elon and the UN, because I think that's really interesting.
Yes, let's talk about that. I will say though, I do think Steve, as if I know him personally, Steve Jobs and Elon, what they do share in common is that I feel like they are very product motivated, like they're product driven. I feel like their visionary brain actually does go towards the product, wanting to create good products. And I don't drive a Tesla, but from what I've heard, Teslas are a great product. As the iPhone is, it's a great product. Like that entire initial design, the fact that we've now had it for almost 15 years, and it clearly has not slowed down whatsoever. Like, he did a great job. So, and there's only so many ways that you can predict the future. I don't think that his intentions were bad. I don't think that he wanted to create something that was gonna complicate things. I think he did want to simplify and
the world.
Unlock possibilities that could not have been unlocked unless we had that.
Yeah, I kind of wish that he was here, and I would hope that if he was still alive, Apple would stick true to them being really about data protection and not selling out that, and
I agree.
all that stuff, So
Yeah. Well, we can't talk about the Elon thing though, because this just came out like today. This is like as of today.
This is hot off the press.
So, what happened was people were circulating, since there's been in the news, especially, that Elon is about to hit like 300 billion in net worth.
I don't know
guess.
the exact number, but yeah, a lot of money.
But his personal wealth has increased so much during the pandemic. So people have been saying, oh, well, why don't we do the math and actually calculate what specific amount of money could solve world hunger of Elon's sole net worth.
Yeah.
And I guess people boiled it down to that if $6 billion were taken out of liquidated from his net worth,
the CNN
and donated to the UN, that could save world hunger.
The article from, just so we get the headline right, CNN Business said that 2% of Elon Musk's wealth could solve world hunger. And this was from the director of the UN's food scarcity organization.
Okay.
So 2%. So then he responded and he said, if the WFP can describe on a Twitter thread exactly how 6 billion will solve world hunger, I will sell Tesla stock right now and do it. But it must be open source accounting so the public sees precisely how the money is spent.
Oh, killer. I love that last line. Yeah. But they won't divulge that.
No.
They won't divulge any records. I feel like you said this, that if they did that, people we'd have access to maybe some sketchy accounts that they would never want to disclose. So I have a tremendous amount of respect for him for him just coming right out and saying it, standing his ground, asking for more, trying to actually investigate why are people saying this. If people do want this, then let's get something in the works. Like, lay it all on the table. Like, I'm willing to do that. You have to do it too. It's a two-way street.
Yeah, and I think, someone tweeted Elon Musk exposed the UN as a money laundering scam and a child sex trafficking operation in a single tweet. And I do think that it is true. Like, here's someone who's like, here, I'm literally willing to write you a $6 million check, but like all you have to do is be transparent. And by the way, it is very,
it isn't that much to ask if you think about it.
Under GAAP, or what's it called? I think GAAP, general accounting principles, whatever. In the US, if you're a nonprofit, you have to publish your official records, like accounting records. And if you're a publicly traded company, you have to do that. So the fact that the UN is denying to do that is kind of sketchy, considering they do all this like worldly charity stuff.
Because they say they're obviously not in the private sector. They're not a business functioning company. Meanwhile, they do business. Yeah. They are a means of agendas and distributor of finances and all that. So yeah, they do function in a similar way. They're just not categorized as a private sector company.
And yeah, this goes back to, again, regardless of if you want climate change to be addressed and you want to solve this, or if you want world hunger to be addressed and you want to solve this, that is all fine and great, and we should be investigating that and like putting forth solutions. However, do you trust these people, these organizations, to execute and do that? And do you believe them when they say, own nothing and you will be happy? Because I just don't. I don't see how you can say that and still have so much wealth and be for that. It doesn't add up, and it's just not trustworthy.
No.
And we're talking about now like another tax, which is like the wealth tax and the capital gains tax, which started getting circulated around this 2020 election.
Yeah, which will be based on people's net worth.
Yeah, so this, for anyone who's not
even if you're not working, even if you're retired, even if you haven't even started working, it's about that.
Yeah. So this, for anyone who doesn't maybe understand like economics or doesn't have a strong grasp on finance, what this wealth will be, like what Jordan says, it's about your net worth. So that could be something as simple as your Social Security, you getting taxed additionally on that. That could be something as simple as the one home that all of your equity is in. Yeah. And it means that you're taxed on unrealized gains. And what unrealized gains are is that it's the wealth that you own in an asset before you sell it. So you right now, like if you have a house, or if you have a shares in a certain stock, like you don't get taxed on that until you sell that stock and realize those gains, because now you have profit. But what this is saying is that you'll get taxed for just even holding those assets. And people already get taxed with property tax every year. They already get taxed when they sell their home or buy a new home. So to also be taxing the middle class on top of that with a wealth tax is not going to hurt the rich.
And they'll definitely be putting effort into tracking assets too, and validating assets, because if people think that a loophole could be just putting all of your wealth into tangible physical assets, or even gold, for example, we know from the central banking system that they will disclose where transactions are being made to help validate those assets. And maybe there will be new ways to validate, but I think that that's also not something that you can be confident in that they won't do either.
Yeah, that's a good point. They will. Especially with this new thing where the IRS wants to track every transaction over $600, and they're claiming that the reason why they want to do that is because they want to monitor billionaires. How many billionaires are really moving around $600? No, this is
not
this
one.
is people. This is people that are working class, middle class, and again, they don't want you to own anything. They don't want you to have a house because they want to buy all the land. They want to control all the resources. They want to control the water sources and the farms and the vegetation. Like that's why they want everyone to be living in tiny apartments and renting and in these large cities.
Like
and not having a lot of
basically
space.
the opposite of autonomous.
Yeah.
I don't even know what that word is. I tried to look at
I
dependent.
guess.
Yeah. Not autonomous. It's sad. I don't want that. I don't want to eat bug burgers. I don't want to eat I don't want to only drink soy milk. I mean, I guess I don't really even drink that much milk anyways, but I don't want to have limited options. I don't want to have my expectations be lowered. You know what? We can be the spokespeople for knowing how to live a non-excessful life or a slower life of having stuff, not in excess, but also not with nothing. Because, yeah, I'm grateful for what I have, but it's always good to have options. Whether you choose to buy a ton of stuff or buy every option, that's up to you. But having the options there, because we all have different tastes. We all have different clothing styles. We don't all want to be wearing the same matching tracksuits like in Squid Game or whatever the hell they wear. Like we want to have freedom to do things, have options, freedom to put our money in a...
The world's more interesting that way.
Yes.
Yeah.
Like when everything's the same, it's boring. And with this supply chain crisis and lack of labor in factories and manufacturing areas, we're not even going to be able to make the stuff that we enjoy. So,
yeah. Can we talk really quickly about the people aspect to this with not only on the side of like people losing their jobs and losing their income, which is like another way to force people to be more reliant on like the government and handouts and that sort of thing. But in regards to the mandates too, where people feel like for the first time ever, they are getting fired based off of, something as simple as a medical decision, where again,
it's not lack of qualification or someone who wouldn't work in that work environment. Otherwise, it's solely that. 5 million people quit their jobs in August. That's just August.
Yeah.
That's a lot of people in 1 month. I don't think that's ever happened before.
Did you see I sent you on...
Not fired, quit.
Yeah.
Over that.
It's powerful.
It's very powerful. You never see that number in the news.
No. It's sad. In New York, there's now periods of the day where the firemen won't respond to calls because they have a shortage of public firemen in New York. In New York, yeah. So literally a child and a grandma burned. The child died. The grandma was severely burned because there's such a shortage of firefighters, where there's like periods of the time, like the day in New York, where they can't respond to calls. So
wow,
we are in a...
Imagine that you're with a loved one or an emergency happens, or even if you're by yourself.
Yeah.
And no one else is there to help you except you try to call 911 and they're like, sorry, we can't.
No. Yeah.
That's in America. I don't know. I genuinely have never
We're
been
spoiled. We've lived in a first world country where you call the police and the police come. You call the firemen and the firemen come. You order something and it comes in the mail. You go to the grocery store, there's food. And we are now in a period where that isn't the case anymore.
It's an if with everything. We used to not have an if.
You have an American passport. You can travel the world. You can go anywhere. And I think that for a while we have been suppressing other countries. I think that wealthy countries actually have been going into other places in the world and occupying them falsely, whether it was through these never-ending wars in the Middle East or weird philanthropy things in Africa. I don't know all the specifics, but that's just my general feeling. And I feel like we've held back the rest of the world, and now the elite is looking at their own countries, and they're the final thing that they have to crush and consolidate, just like they did with the third world countries. And I feel like that's where we're at right now. And like, they let us have our fun, and now the fun is potentially over. And that's just my feeling. I don't have a lot of like
No, that makes
data
sense.
to back it up, but just as I'm seeing everything like lose control. I mean, I went to LA last weekend, and I was asked for my vaccine passport when I went into a club, and this was the first time that had happened to me. And of course, I wasn't going to comply, and I just pretended that he said passport instead. So I showed him my actual passport, and he actually let me in. So hopefully that gives you some hope to just like keep doing your thing and don't comply.
Yeah, like, I have my passport. Just play dumb.
Exactly. That's exactly what I did. And I will continue to do that because I refuse, vaccinated or unvaccinated, it doesn't matter. Like, no one should be complying to this stuff. No one has any right to your medical stuff, but that's another tangent.
Yeah.
But you know what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah.
I think we're deteriorating very fast.
I think that you definitely just made a really good point of the leaders having knocked out the little tasks of smaller countries, third world countries, second world countries, and now the bigger final tasks are their home countries, obviously America being
The big one.
the big one. And it's going to be tough. I think the resistance is strong. I am proud to be a part of it, but I don't know. It's not impossible. I mean, clearly, after the amount of success that they've had in the last year and a half, I can believe anything now. And I really want people to wake up to this whole regular folk versus elite thing, because we talk about that in every episode. And I just want to make sure that keeps getting emphasized, because I really do think that that's the dichotomy right now. It's not whites versus blacks. It's not left versus right. It's not people who work or people who don't. It's not even socialists versus capitalists. I think it's genuinely people who want freedom to be autonomous versus people who want to restrict them from having that. So, yeah, we'll see.
Choose freedom.
But yeah. I love this theme though. Own nothing and you'll be happy. It's a statement. I'm sure someone somewhere, one of these people have said that, and we might have to dig in some transcripts, but it's scary. It's very scary.
Yeah, a lot of people have talked about this. I encourage you to just keep resisting. Show them your real passport. If they ask for your vaccine, do whatever you got to do. Like,
Yep.
Yep.
Unless if you haven't been vaccinated, just forewarning, maybe don't fly out of the country.
Oh yeah, so good.
Because this isn't being promoted anywhere for people to find out. I think people are genuinely thinking, oh, I can just book tickets to Mexico or Canada just for a weekend trip or whatever. And then they go and then they try to come back and all of a sudden they're getting harassed basically for all their medical information, and then being threatened with someone showing up at their door doing a checkup the next day. I didn't know this was a thing, and so now I'm absolutely not going to be flying out of the country anytime soon.
Yeah, so starting November 8th, the government is pushing for, even if you're a U.S. citizen, that you need to be vaccinated to re-enter. Even if you are vaccinated, you have to do a COVID test. If you're coming in from a country where less than 10% of the population is vaccinated, you're allowed to be here for a month, and then you have to get the vaccine. And then on top of this, even if you are able to get out of getting the vaccine, you still have to submit your consent to be not only contract trace, but you're giving away your rights for the government to be able to come to your house and do these, what Jordan said, a health checkup, which again is very vague. This is kind of similar language that we heard with the Patriot Act. So I just, it's good for people to be aware who don't want to give up that information and that autonomy.
Yeah, we don't know if that's just a COVID rapid test or if it's a full blood draw or if it's more than that. We don't know. We don't have that information yet. But I think it's good to play it safe and stay on the safe side just to not even get yourself into that situation and unless it happens unnecessarily. So, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, do you have anything else you want to
No, I think we covered it. But we just want to say thank you guys for listening. If you're a new subscriber to our YouTube channel, we want to say thank you.
Yes.
We're keeping up with the bi-weekly, maybe even weekly upload schedule. So, yeah, we're going to keep having fun. And yeah,
maybe we'll do like a cocktail episode next.
I love those. Or
Yes.
tea time. We haven't had tea on the podcast in a while.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah.
Shout out to Tim Dillon once again. He's our main keyword name in every episode that we talk about.
Yeah. He had a really good episode this week, so check it out if you're a fan.
As always.
Yeah. All right. Tune in, subscribe, comment. We love seeing your guys' comments, so we really appreciate that.
Yes.
And we'll
Thank you for
soon.
listening. Thank you for watching. Talk to you guys later. Thank you.